A dramatic day in Israel today. Unprecedented scenes outside the Israeli Knesset, which saw protesters laying down in the streets in Jerusalem as the coalition advances with the reasonableness bill, a part of its legal reform.
64 בעד, אין מתנגדים, אין נמנעים. אני קובע כי הצעת חוק יסוד השפיטה תיקון מספר 4 עברה בקריאה השלישית ונכנסה לספר החוקים. ישיבה זו נעולה. הישיבה תחודש בשעה 4.
The Israeli Knesset officially passed the Reasonableness Standard Bill into law on Monday, marking the first piece of legislation of the coalition's judicial reform. The opposition boycotted the third and final vote following a tense and hours-long second reading of the bill, which included voting on 140 objections. The final voting took place on Monday afternoon after an intensive 26-hour marathon debate that began on Sunday morning and saw Knesset members from the coalition and opposition take to the podium. And as negotiations were ongoing behind the scenes at the behest of Israeli President Yitzhak Herzog to reach a compromise on the legislation until the very last minute. On Monday morning, President Herzog said in a statement that Israel is in a state of national emergency and called on all parties to show responsibility. Meanwhile, protesters took to the streets in Jerusalem and in the early hours of Monday morning blocked all entrances to the Knesset. Throughout the day, Israelis witnessed difficult scenes of protesters laying on the ground outside the Knesset as Israeli police opened water cannons and attempted to remove the protesters.
We're here to protect our democracy. We were left with no choice but to go to disobedience, nonviolent disobedience. We're here to protect our democracy with our bodies.
And so, as the legislation passed and the coalition scored a key victory, Israel remains deeply divided. Anti-reform protesters are still taking to the streets as leaders seek to calm tensions. And so the question now remains, what will happen tomorrow? Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple. And joining us now with more from Jerusalem is ILTV's Steve Leibovitz. Steve, you're in Jerusalem now. Hi, Steve. You're in Jerusalem now. What can you tell us about the protests and the overall mood in Israel's capital today?
Well, I'm just outside of the place where the Supreme Court meets the Knesset. And this is the place where it's all happening. There are thousands of people flowing in towards the Knesset. They want to be present on what many of them consider to be an historic day that they think is going to have ramifications for years to come. Of course, the people that are here today are against the judicial reforms. They're here to make their voices heard, and they're doing just that.
I mean, we're also seeing the protesters laying down in the streets, blocking the entrance to the Knesset, police use of water cannons. I mean, what can you tell us?
Well, different than most of the other protests that I've attended in the last 7 months, there's been quite a lot of civil disobedience now. People feel that this is basically the end of the line. The vote is taking place during these hours. And they're ready and willing to be arrested in clashes with the police. Non-violent civil disobedience, I want to emphasize, I have not witnessed any violence, but certainly the protesters are resisting, yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, Steve, you've been covering Israel for many, many years. Have you ever seen scenes like this, like the scenes that we're seeing today outside of the Knesset?
I've seen some very wild protests. I've seen settlement movement protests over the years. I've seen anti-Oslo demonstrations, certainly back before the murder of Rabin. But I've never seen anything like this. The sustained effort of 29 weeks now, of literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, that have attended these protests. And of course, as we know, this weekend, there were also over 100,000 that attended a pro-government rally in Tel Aviv. They are not going to end their struggle today, I don't believe. I think most of them look at it as though they're losing this battle, perhaps, but they're in it for the long run, in their view, to try to save democracy.
And so regardless of the Knesset legislation, the Knesset vote, I mean, these really are difficult scenes for many Israelis to witness. Do you think Israel will be able to recover from this tomorrow?
I don't think we'll recover from this tomorrow, no. I think this is going to be a pretty deep division within the society, possibly for years to come. I hope it will be the kind of break that we'll be able to recover from relatively quickly. I've seen Israel with a lot of troubles over the years. When the troubles have been from outside, we've always known how to emerge from them intact and stronger. Right now, the troubles are from inside, brother against brother. I hope we'll recover from it quickly.
Now, you're standing in the streets, and we hear and we see the people moving behind you, a lot of noise behind you. I mean, what is the mood? Are they optimistic that that these protests will have any effect?
I think the people here are not surprised that the laws are being passed. They didn't expect it to end today. They were hopeful that it would be put on hold at least and shelved. But I think these people are quite determined that unless it's taken off the table, their protests are not going to end. Is that going to happen anytime soon? I don't think so, at least not according to what we're seeing politically today. But the people here certainly seem to continue to be determined.
All right, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today from Jerusalem. And in the midst of the scenes we're seeing today, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was released from the hospital with doctors ordering 48 hours of rest following the implantation of a pacemaker. Overnight, Netanyahu met President Herzog in the hospital for urgent talks on the judicial reform vote in the Knesset. And rest may prove difficult at this time. ILTV's William Sharon reporting.
Prime Minister Netanyahu exited the hospital and straight into managing political discussions with the president while managing expectations of his coalition. Specialists now admit that Netanyahu fainted last week and has had heart condition issues for years and has not released medical reports since 2016. Doctors who rushed to implant a pacemaker in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu early Sunday morning later revealed that he had suffered a potentially life-threatening transit heart block. Before leaving hospital, Netanyahu had this to say about his condition.
אני מבקש להודות לרבים מכם שדרשתם בשלומי, ולהודות גם לצוות המצוין בשיבא שמלווה אותי. כפי שאתם רואים, שלומי מצוין. אנחנו ממשיכים במאמצים להשלים את החקיקה, וגם במאמצים לעשות את זה בהסכמה. אבל בכל מקרה אני רוצה שתדעו שמחר בבוקר אני מצטרף לחבריי בכנסת. ובינתיים, תודה רבה לכולכם.
The doctors say that the heart monitor implant a week ago indicated a danger and issued an alert prompting Netanyahu's immediate hospitalization and the fitting of a pacemaker. The doctors admitted they had spotted irregularities in the electrodiagram test when he was hospitalized last week, but they had assured the public that the Prime Minister's heart was completely normal.
And now U.S. President Joe Biden, who has in recent weeks expressed his opposition to the legal reform, once again weighing in on the eve of the Knesset vote for the reasonableness standard bill. In an exclusive statement to Wallace Barak Ravid, Biden said Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu shouldn't rush through the divisive judicial reform bill and called on Netanyahu to not move forward, especially in light of the external threats facing Israel. In the statement, Biden said, "It looks like the current judicial reform proposal is becoming more divisive, not less." He added that given the range of threats and challenges confronting Israel right now, it doesn't make sense for Israeli leaders to rush this. The focus should be on pulling people together and finding a consensus. The report also quoted other senior U.S. sources who said that the Pentagon is concerned that the crisis facing the Israeli military could have negative implications for Israel's deterrence strategy and encourage Iran or Hezbollah to conduct military provocations that could escalate the situation in the region. This marks the fourth time that the U.S. president has expressed his concern and opposition to the legal reform in the last week alone, beginning with his phone call to Netanyahu and in his meetings with Israeli President Yitzhak Herzog.